Your host, Rob Berger. Welcome back to the show. Again, this is the second week in a row I've done the show live. It's kind of like without a safety net. I don't know what's going to go wrong. Something will certainly go wrong, but that's okay. This is episode 367. That's hard to believe. I started this podcast it was Veterans Day of 2013, I believe. Of course, I sold it for a while, still ran the podcast for a bit, then was away. Now I'm back. 367, it seems crazy. Anyway, enough chit chat. So we're going to talk about three things today. The first is a big hairy problem with the 4% rule. That's, the one of many, it turns out, sort of rules of thumb about how much you can spend each year in retirement without going broke, right? So the idea is you spend 4% of your investments, your nest egg, the first year of retirement, whatever that is. So if you got $1 million, it's 40 grand. And then you adjust that 40,000 by inflation. And if you do that, at least based on historical numbers, you're guaranteed, again, based on historical data, for your money to last 30 years. But there's a big problem with the 4% rule that I want to share with you. And then I'm going to show you three of my favorite, I'll call them financial planning tools. There's a lot of sort of budgeting tools, good budgeting tools, but kind of what they do primarily is just budgeting. But of course, there's a lot more to our finance. I mean, as important as budgeting is, but I mean, there's a lot more to finances than just budgeting. So I got three that I'm going to show you. One's free, two are paid. I think they're all great. And then I want to do a quick primer on credit card rewards and how to think about which credit card you should get if your goal is to maximize your rewards. There's a lot of options out there, and it's actually very easy to think through what is best for you. We'll talk about a few specific credit cards, but the bigger issue is more how to think about credit card rewards and your strategy. So that's what we're going to cover today. And we'll start with the 4% rule. And I actually did a video earlier this week on my other YouTube channel, The Rob Berger Show, where I talked about a spending strategy that was written about 5 years ago out of the Stanford Center on Longevity. And it was really simple. It's basically you spend, of course, Social Security, and there are certain kind of ways, some rules around when you start Social Security, but you spend your Social Security, and then for your retirement nest egg, you just spend your required minimum distributions. And there's a little more to it than that, but not much. I mean, there are ways to deal with if you retire before your RMDs kick in. It's not hard to do to figure that out. Of course, you can apply the RMD rules to things like Roth and taxable accounts. I mean, just for purposes of calculating an amount to spend. Obviously, it's not required by the IRS, but it's a very simple strategy. And two of the things I really liked about it is that when it came to spending your nest egg, you factored in what the market was doing. If the market had a bad year, like 2022, well, your RMDs are going to be less the way you calculate it. So you're going to spend a little bit less. Your Social Security will go up with inflation, so that's good. But part of your spending that comes from your savings, market has a bad year, you spend less. And I like that because I think it's, as a practical matter, what most people do. All the retirees that I know, when we went through 2022, they were tightening their belt. They weren't just blindly following the 4% rule. Inflation's 9% and the market's tanked. Let's keep spending. It's just not what people do. And it kind of gets to the hint of the problem I'm having with the 4% rule. But the point is, this strategy, it's not perfect, but it factors in what's going on in the real world. The 4% rule ignores the market. But the other thing I liked about this approach is, as a practical matter, you can't really run out of money. I mean, because of the way RMDs are calculated, I suppose in theory you could, but you'd have to live to be very, very old. I mean, the RMD tables go to, I think, 115. Now, on an inflation-adjusted basis, the amount you're spending could end up going significantly lower if you just happen to retire at a very bad time. But because it's only part of the retirement puzzle. The other part's Social Security, which is adjusted for inflation. You have some overall stability. And of course, you could say the same thing with the 4% rule because, that applies to your nest egg, but you've also got Social Security there too, and that's fair. But the problem, I think there's a very practical problem, actually a couple with the 4% rule. But the one is, by the way, I've met no one that says, yeah, I spend an inflation adjusted amount the same every year through retirement. No one I've ever met does that. That's maybe a minor problem, but the bigger issue is I think it's very hard for a retiree to stick to some sort of, they call it constant dollar approach, like the 4% rule, when inflation is high and the market is going down. I know we can look at history and say if you do that, everything should work out at least over a 30-year time period. But when you're actually retired, and I've personally dealt with these issues, boy, it's really hard to do that. And for those watching this on the YouTube video as opposed to the podcast, the audio podcast, I want to show you something. This is ficalc.app. It's a great little tool that allows you to model different ways to think about spending in retirement. And this is modeling the 4% rule. They call it here. You can see it here in the drop down, a constant dollar approach. First year, we spend 40 grand on $1 million portfolio. That's where the 4% comes in. And we tick this box here and we adjust it for inflation. All right, fine. The problem is, depending on when you retire, the red actually ran out of money. The blue had a lot of money left over, but the yellow here didn't run out of money, but it kind of came close. And that's what I want to focus on. Of course, there aren't that many years where that happened. Of course, who knows what will happen in our own retirements if you're retiring now or you're a few years in. But here's the portfolio. It started $1 million on an inflation adjusted basis. And at the end of 30 years, you're down to 50 grand. And this is the problem. You see, there were some really big drops here. In 72, 73 and 74, really bad markets plus inflation. But it continued just to get ugly and stay ugly for a good decade. And it's times like that I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Let me throw my face up on the screen there. It's going to be very, very difficult for a retiree to actually stick with something like the 4% rule. I get it in theory. I've talked a lot about it. I think it's a great planning tool. I'm just not so sure that it's a great tool to use, to actually retire and think about how much you should spend. I'm not suggesting that this other strategy, which is called the Spend Safely in Retirement strategy, and I'll link to the video I did in the other YouTube channel below this video and in the show notes. You can check that out if you haven't seen it. I'm not suggesting that it's perfect by any stretch. It's got its own issues, but I sure think it's a lot more practical. And in fact, I know a number of folks in retirement who are actually following it without realizing that they're following it because they spend their Social Security and they spend their RMDs. And I think that's just what a lot of retirees do. And I think the analysis that they went through in that study kind of supports that it's a solid approach. And there was actually a follow-on paper, supplement, if you will, 2 years later, it was published in 2019, that added a lot of sort of dimensions to it and ways to modify it to fit your specific circumstances. Again, I won't dive into the details. You can check out the other video. And in that other video, by the way, I linked to all of this, all the studies and whatnot. So I would definitely check it out if that's of interest to you. All right, topic 1, we're done. How about that? Topic 2, I want to just show you quickly 3, I guess I'll call them personal finance, financial planning tools. There we go. They certainly can handle budgets in some ways, some better than others. But they're really designed more to plan your entire financial life, whether getting out of debt, if you're saving to buy a house, you're saving for education, to buy a car, obviously for retirement. And they all have their advantages and disadvantages. As I said, the first one I'll show you is free. We've talked about it actually in the past. The other 2 are paid. So the first one is Empower. It used to be called Personal Capital. And I really do think that this is an excellent free tool. And it's wanting me to do 2-factor authentication, which is important. If you don't have 2-factor authentication set up, what I'm signing into is a demo account, actually. It doesn't have any of my personal data, but it doesn't matter. You should always use 2-factor authentication on all of your financial accounts. So here we are. I'll show it to you for the folks watching. Again, this is just a demo account. Now, it's free, but you need to understand something about Empower. Empower's business is wealth management. They want to manage people's investments. So they're going to call you. Now, and they're going to offer to do a free evaluation of your portfolio. You can take them up on the offer if you want. You don't have to. I've never done that. I've used, I keep calling it Personal Capital. It's now Empower for over a decade. I think I started using it when it came out, which I want to say is 2009. Am I that old? Don't answer that question. All right. Anyway, This kind of does everything, right? So you've got banking here, which does cash flow and budgeting. You can track your bills. As you can see here, you can track your net worth. You can link retirement accounts, taxable accounts, HSAs. You can link your home or other real estate. You can see here I've put in, these aren't mine. These are just manual investments that I've entered. So if you didn't want to link all your accounts, you could put in some manual holdings. I've done that here. Let me get rid of this. And let me get rid of something else real quick if I can, maybe. Here we go. Get rid of that off the screen. Okay. So that's all sort of the banking. The thing where this really shines is investing. I think it gives you the easiest to understand analysis of your investments, including your asset allocation, your investment fees, and things like that. It's they use a lot of graphs and graphics, and you can drill down on each of these. And I just think it's the easiest to use. And then they have the retirement planner that's it's good. It's not as robust as some of the other two I'm going to show you, but it's a good retirement planner, particularly I think for those that are still saving for retirement. If you're actually getting ready to retire or in retirement, I've got something else I think is better for the retirement piece of it that I'll show you. But you can model a lot of things, Social Security, if you buy an annuity, if you have real estate investments, and so on. You can do a savings planner if you're saving for something. A retirement fee an analyzer that I think is excellent. It shows you not only the fees you're paying on your funds, but the impact those fees will have on your wealth from now until you retire. And I don't know, it's my internet, but this is slow to load. I don't know what's going on there, but in any event, it's a good tool and it's free. So I've used it for a long time. I like it. Yeah, it says this seems to be taking a while. We'll come back. All right, this is the second one. This is demo data as well. This one's called Projection Lab, and it kind of does the same thing. It's not as good at analyzing your investments. It's not going to break down your asset allocation and your investment expenses like Empower will. It's also really not a budgeting tool. So that's why I say Empower kind of gives you, well, here's the fee analyzer. Empower kind of gives you everything. But what Projection Lab does, though, it does give you more robust planning tools generally. For example, for retirement, you can model different withdrawal strategies in retirement, like the 4% rule, and they have several others that you can model. You can, as you can see, you can link your accounts or create them manually. You can have multiple sources of income, you, a spouse, but maybe you have a side hustle, maybe you have real estate. You can model all of that in income. You can model expenses, and you can break it out in just about any way you want, as they've done in this demo. Of course, you've got real assets like your car. I don't typically track my car, but you might have other investments, real estate and whatnot. And then this is a pretty neat part of it. Again, I've done a whole video on this. I'll link to it below the video in the show notes, but you have cash flow priorities. So like in this case, the cash flow priority is the emergency fund. So if you have extra cash, it goes to the emergency fund. And then if you still have extra cash, it goes to the 401k and so forth. But you can just drag and drop these. You can say, I'll put my emergency fund number 3, and I really want to tackle credit card payments. Let's put that to the top. And it immediately adjusts your projection. And it shows you your projections by year. It's really just a wealth of tools. I really like this tool. All these little icons, by the way, are events. The little palm tree here is when you retire, you and your spouse. So that's exciting. But what do they have down here? Paid off a car loan, start a vacation, because part of the priorities was saving for a vacation. So Projection Lab, a really good tool. They've actually somewhat recently added a whole tax analytics feature. It's part of the premium, which I actually subscribe to, but not with this account. This is just a demo account. So it is part of the premium. I will say you'll want the tax analytics, certainly as you're getting near retirement, or the other time I think it probably makes sense is if you're really contemplating Roth conversions, because that's basically a tax analysis is what that is, right? All right, the last one, I got to sign back in, is New Retirement. This is a demo account as well. I have my own, but this is a demo account. So I think if we try to put all of these in context, I think Empower, a good all-around tool. I think Projection Lab doesn't give you the analysis on investments or the budgeting, but good for if it's more intensive financial planning. New Retirement is similar to Projection Lab, I think. It's not really a budgeting tool per se, although you can create a retirement budget in some detail. Where I see New Retirement fitting in is probably ideal for those folks getting ready to retire, I don't know, maybe 5 years out and through retirement, because it gets heavy. It's got a very robust tool to help you determine when to claim Social Security. It's down here in the Social Security Explorer. It does a lot of healthcare cost analysis in retirement, including Medicare and the IRMA calculations and all of that. Of course, you can put in all your assets manually or link your accounts. You can set assumptions like inflation and returns and all of those sorts of things. And it gives you a plan. And we can see the overview here. It uses Monte Carlo analysis. And you can then easily choose different assumptions, and that'll change the outcome. If we use this assumption of average, we only have a 15% chance of success, but that's probably because I threw garbage data into this when I created it. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I did, the demo person just needs to work longer. But I really like New Retirement. Their support team is excellent. I know the founder, Steve, and so it's a great. I think all three of these tools are great. As I mentioned, Empower is free. So if you're just getting started, or you just don't think you need the robust financial planning tools, other than maybe a basic retirement planner and savings planner, that probably makes sense. I think if you're trying to get out of debt, you're trying to get out of school debt, maybe buy your first home, that kind of financial planning, and even retirement planning, Projection Lab. If you're getting near retirement, want something to sort of, plan your, retirement and thereafter, I think New Retirement probably makes the most sense. I use all three, but that's just because there's something wrong with me. All right, so there's that. All right, we're moving through this. So the third thing I want to talk about, and I see folks in the chat, by the way, because this is a live show, and I will say hello to all of you. I'm not really answering questions. My screen is projecting like a mirror. That's not good. I'll have to work on that. That is a setting in Restream, the software that I use. Of course, if you're listening to this as a podcast, you're like, Rob, I don't really care. But that's going to mess up the video. And that really angers me because I have reset that. I can't tell you how many times. And I don't think I can reset it during the chat. Oh, well, I guess life goes on. So maybe we won't need to use the screen that much, but that frosts me, if I'm being honest with you. I would use stronger language, but we're live on the air. All right, I'll get that fixed. Credit card rewards. So there are a gazillion credit cards out there, and it can be a little confusing as to which one makes sense. And I think a lot of folks just find one that appeals to them for some reason. It gets 5% on groceries. I like it. I'll take it. And that may not be a bad way to go, I suppose. But there's a really simple way to think through credit card rewards that will tell you what types of cards you can get. It'll narrow it down for you very quickly, and you can make a very quick decision. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that no one was texting me to say there was some other issue with the live stream. And so how does this work? So, when you look, if you Google best rewards credit card or whatever, including if you've landed on my site, allcards.com, you're just going to see a list of cards. Many of them are advertisers. On our site, we list a lot of cards, most of which are not advertisers, but some of them are. The big sites are pretty much only going to show you their advertisers, but in fairness, they're pretty good cards. But they won't really give you any guidance on which one you should pick or how you should even think about this. And I think it's really simple. The very first question there's really two questions you should ask and answer. The first is, how many credit cards do you want to use on a regular basis? Some of you might say, look, I want some cash back or whatever, but I don't want to make this complicated. I just want to use one card. Others will say, Rob, I'll use 17 if it gets me the most cash back or rewards I can get. All right, but that's the first question, and we'll talk about the significance. And then the second question is generally a rough idea of what you spend your money on and how much you spend. That's going to determine which cards you should get. So regardless of your answer on the first question, you may say, I want 1 card, I only want 3 cards, I want 13 cards. The very first foundational rewards card you should have is not one that pays some fancy high rewards for a category of spending. It should be a card that pays solid rewards on all categories, on everything, right? And for the most part, there are cards that do that pay 1.5%. They may pay them in points or miles. If they do, you want to make sure you know what the value of those points and miles are. Should you choose to redeem them for cash, 1 penny per point is sort of the standard. But there's 1.5% credit cards. And then there are 2% credit cards. Obviously, 2% is better than 1.5%. Now, there are some cards that pay a little more. There's the Alliant Credit Union card that pays up to 2.5%. It used to be much better than it is today. It used to be uncapped. Now it's capped at $10,000 a month, which I think for most people, that'd be fine. But then you also have to open up now they've added another requirement. You got to open up a checking account with them and have a debit card transaction. And if that's what you want to do, it's a pretty good card. I just have no interest in doing that. But there are plenty of 2% cards. Let me pull it up, even though it's probably going to be reversed. It is reversed. I can see it now. That's just awful. See, that's the downside of doing this live. And I can't change it until I shut down the live stream, which I'm not going to do. So I'll just have to talk. I have a page that lists 2% cashback credit cards. Citibank has one. Wells Fargo has one. I think Barclays has one. And I do mention Fidelity has a great 2% card, all with no annual fees. There's some business cards that offer 2%. Venture, which is the Capital One, is 2% if you use the rewards for travel, but there is a $95 annual fee. So I will link to that in the show notes below the video. And I still can't get over that the screen is mirrored. Man, that angers me. Okay, maybe I can change it. Can I change it now? Maybe. Let's see. I know you guys are like, Rob, oh, here we go. I think I just figured it out. Too bad I didn't know that ahead of time. I don't know why that setting keeps changing on me. All right, well, we're back. There it is. There's the 2% credit card page. The point is, that should be your first card. If you only want one, that's going to get you probably 75% of the way there. As we'll see, unless you have some really unique spending patterns, a 2% card is going to be probably what the vast majority of people need. There's not a lot of additional advantage, but there can be. So we'll talk about it. So, but that should be your first card, even if you want 13. That should be your foundational card that you use either all the time, if you want to keep it simple, or if you're going to have more cards, you'll use this one when the cards you have don't offer, a higher tier of rewards. All right. So now what do you do? Well, you simply look at how you spend and how much you spend if you want to carry more than one card and decide, all right, I spend a lot on groceries. Maybe you've got a big family, you spend a lot on groceries, so you want a grocery credit card. Or maybe you spend a lot on gasoline, so you want a card that pays extra on gas. I want to mention a few that I like from a number of the different issuers, depending on, again, how you spend your money. The first one I want to mention is for rent. If you're renting, credit cards most landlords won't even accept a credit card because of the fees. But there is a credit card out there, no annual fee, and it pays you, it's not the best reward, but it's 1%. And that's better than nothing because for rent, you're basically going to get nothing. And here it is. It's the Bilt, B-I-L-T, MasterCard. Again, I'll link to all this below the show notes or below the video. And there you go. It pays, it has other rewards, but I think the key reward, like it gives you 2x on travel and 3x on dining. You could do better, certainly on travel for sure. And even on dining, if that's a big spend for you. But if you rent $1,000 a month or whatever it is, or maybe you pay a heck of a lot more, it's free rewards. It's the only one that I know of that gives you cash back on rent. If you guys know of others, let me know. So that's the first one. Now, I'm gonna go through these very quickly. This is the Citi Double Cash, by the way. This is one of the 2% credit cards. The one I want to show you, though, the next one is this one right here. Citi Custom Cash is a unique card. But by the way, this could be your only card if you only spend about, say, 1,000 a month on a credit card, and a lot of it goes to one category. Because what this card does is it'll pay you 5% cash back on up to $500 spending in one of several eligible categories. And you say, okay, well, how do I pick the category? Well, here we go. Here it is. You pick the category, or rather, Citibank picks it for you, and they pick it based on how you spend your money. So if you just happen to spend $500 on groceries, then they're just going to apply it to your groceries that month. And if the next month you spend, $500 on gas or whatever, they'll apply it to that category. So there's no sort of quarterly categories that change and that you have to sign up for, which always drove me crazy. So I think this is a really solid card from Citibank, Citi Custom Cash. I don't carry this card. I do carry the Citi Double Cash card. I don't have this card, but I think it's excellent. By the way, if you're a couple, you can each get your own card, and then you have two categories that can earn 5% cash back. And I've even heard some people get this in a Citi Double Cash, and then after a year, they're able to transfer the Citi Double Cash to a second Citi Custom Cash card. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. That's just what I read on the World Wide Web. So there you go. Other cards that I like, this is from American Express. So if you spend a lot of money on groceries, you could consider the Blue Cash Preferred. Now, there is a fee, and it is 6% on groceries, but there's a 6,000 spend cap a year. But you also get 6% cash back on streaming subscriptions, which could be a couple $100 a month, I guess, depending on how much TV you watch. You also get 3% cash back on basically transportation and 3% on gas. So this one card could cover a lot of additional categories. Again, there's a fee, but still, I think a good deal. I'll mention two other cards from Amex. Amex Gold, the thing that people are surprised, I was surprised to learn this, is it pays 4x back on supermarket purchases. This is up to $25,000 a year, which, I never really thought of the gold card. I always think of it as travel, not sort of a grocery store card, but there you go. And it also pays 4x on restaurants and 3x on flights booked through Amex Travel. The last Amex card I'll mention, and this is one I'm considering getting, not for the points. It's the Platinum card, and it's very expensive. It's $695. You can get some of that back on a number of credits. They have a $200 hotel credit, a $200 airline fee credit, and a few others, some of which I won't use, like $300 on Equinox. I won't use that. But the reason I'm considering getting this is because the elevated status you get at like Marriott and Hilton, plus the lounge access you get. So if you travel, even not a lot, but a decent amount, I actually think this could be a great card. It's not for cash back, but for those additional perks. All right. The last sort of set of cards I want to mention are, where'd they go? I'll pull them up, are from Chase. I think Chase is an excellent option, particularly if you want to use your points for travel. I particularly like the Chase Sapphire Preferred card. I'll pull it up here because, it earns Chase Ultimate Rewards, and they're decent. 5x on travel purchase through Chase, and then a bunch of categories with 3x, including groceries and streaming service. But then when you use these points for travel, you get a 25% bonus, assuming you book it through Chase. But then the other thing that folks will do is pair that card with, say, a Chase Freedom Unlimited, which is a cashback card, but you actually earn Chase Ultimate Reward points with it, including 3% on at drugstores, 3% at restaurants and dining, and then 1% on everything else. It's also travel. But the point is, you can then, I've done this, it's very easy to do. You can transfer these points over to the preferred card and then get that 25% bonus when you book travel through Chase. So if you do some traveling, I think, Venture Capital One has some good cards. The Venture and Venture X are definitely worth considering. For me, I don't know, I like the Chase ecosystem for travel. And so if that's, important to you, then I think that's a good option. So I know I've kind of run through this quickly. You could pick other categories. Like I said, you could find a card that pays a lot on gas. If you're trying to keep it simple, finding cards that hit multiple spend categories, like the Amex Blue Cash Preferred, possibly the Citi Custom Cash, if your categories where you spend the money kind of tend to change from month to month. Maybe you spend a lot on gas in the summer because you're traveling, but more in other categories, off season when you're not traveling as much. That might be a good option. But you can find one or maybe two cards that give you that elevated rewards on multiple categories. And so you can get sort of a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak, with just one or two extra cards above, the everyday spend card. So I will leave links to all of this. I'm sorry for the snafu on the live stream. I guess that means that all of those great financial tools, Empower, let's show it to you quickly. Projection Lab, which I guess I should go here, or maybe even here, and New Retirement, they were all backwards. Let's see what those looked like. So all of that, the whole time, looked like, yeah, that's not good. Oh, the comments to this video are going to be unkind, and frankly, they should be. You should go to the comments right now and give me what for. I need to do better than this. Well, what can I tell you? I'm getting old. Anyway, I do the best I can. I told you something would go wrong with the live stream, but I'm working on it. I mean, I've only been live streaming for a couple of years, so you got to give me time to kind of work out all the kinks. We'll get there. Oh, for the four of you, if there's even that many that are still watching, I didn't mean to, one other thing. I've been reading this book called Wanting by Luke Burgess. And I forget, I don't know how I came across it, but I'm almost done on the last chapter. I really like this book. And it's about mimetic, do I pronounce that right? Yes, mimetic desire. The basic idea, as I understand it, is we all want certain things. We want certain relationships, certain careers. We want a certain kind of car. We want to live in a certain place. We want to retire early. We never want to retire. Whatever. We want. And what the book says is, a lot of those probably don't originate with us, that we are really influenced by other people and other sort of models, not models in the sense of pretty people walking down a runway, but frameworks, I guess. And we can't really avoid that completely, but it's really important to understand that and really spend some time trying to understand what those influences are in our lives, so that we can have as much control over that as possible, recognizing that none of us are going to be completely immune to influences from other folks. And the book kind of is split into two, and I may do on the other channel a whole video on this book, but the first section sort of describes this phenomenon, I guess you'd call it. And then the second half of the book talks about strategies to sort of identify it in our own lives and other people's lives, and how to maybe try to counteract it, at least to a point. One of the interesting sort of, I guess, suggested questions to ask yourself is, in your life, as you think back, what is something you've done that you would describe as successful and that you got a lot of fulfillment out of? It was a very meaningful experience, whatever that might have been for you. It could be something relatively short-lived. It could be, maybe you built a business for 10 years and just really had a lot of fulfillment from that. But to try to identify those times in your life when that happened, and then to really give some thought to why those experiences were so meaningful to you. What kind of a way to figure out what's important for you and what's not. And the book, of course, goes through a better description of this than I'm giving you right now. But I found that useful because, there's a lot of questions we ask to try to get at our motivations, right? Like, maybe one of you won the Powerball. Congratulations. I think it was sold in California, the winning ticket. But you get this question, what would you do if you won the lottery? Oh, I don't know. We try to answer that as best we can. Or, what would you do if you could retire today? Or we have these ways of trying to peel back the onion to get at what is most meaningful and important to us. And I've always found those sorts of questions to be difficult to answer. I don't know if I won $1 billion, or even, that's kind of ridiculous, although that was the amount of the Powerball. But if I won $50 million, how do I know what I would do? I don't really know. I don't know. But I can look back on my life and identify times and experiences that were the most meaningful to me, and then start asking some questions about them and trying to use them to understand what I value, maybe what I don't value. It's interesting for me, one of the best decisions that led to a lot of career fulfillment that I ever made was, I got out of law school. I worked at a big law firm, 60, 70 hours a week, a lot of travel, 8 years, made partner. And then 2 years later, I quit. And I wasn't at all sure if that was the right decision. Took a huge pay cut. My new office at the company I went to work for had no windows. It was like a converted closet. I'm like, and I came from a big office as a partner at a big firm. And I'm like, what the heck did I just do? So I wasn't at all convinced then that it was the right decision. But as I look back on it, there's no question that it was the right decision. And I can learn a lot about myself and that sort of thing when I really think about that, and then add other times in my life where I think, yeah, that was right. That was fulfilling. I'm glad I did that, and think about it. Anyway, Wanting. I think it's a really good book. So you might want to check it out. All right. I think I've done enough damage for one day. I think. So I think I'll bring this episode to a close, and hopefully next week with the podcast, the screen will be mirrored or not mirrored or whatever, and it will be correct. Thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great weekend. I'm going to go play some bullet speed chess now. Hopefully I'll do better there than I have today. Hope you have a great week, great weekend. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy, apart from understanding how technology works, is financial freedom.